Mr. Secretary of State, thank you so much for joining us. Give us your assessment on the security of the election in your state for November.
Well, we had to accommodate, obviously, the change of circumstances for our primary. It was scheduled to be in May. We moved it to June, and we expanded absentee voting. Usually we have about 2% of our votes cast absentee. It was 75% in our primary. And we handled it in a very competent way, and we think we'll do that as well in the fall. There were a lot of predictions that we'd have a debacle, and they turned out to be wrong.
You negotiated this with a Democratic governor in your state. Why does this issue transcend party?
Well, Democrats and Republicans want to vote this fall, so do independents and everybody else. And so I think actually it worked out pretty well that in Kentucky, our law is pretty unique. In a state of emergency, the election rules can be changed last minute. We have a part-time legislature. They weren't able to pass a new election code for holding elections in a pandemic. And so they gave the authority to a Democratic governor and a Republican Secretary of State to work out a new plan. And it worked out pretty good. That meant that both sides' concerns were accommodated. It also meant that the whole public could have confidence in our system because the rules were seen as fair and credible.
Do Kentucky voters have confidence in the system as the president is going on the attack?
I think so. I think most do. I think people on the very far left and the very far right are not necessarily persuaded yet, but these are people that have conspiracy theories about everything. They think the economy is rigged, the government's rigged, everything is rigged. I think people in the broad center of politics in Kentucky, people on the center left, center right, and in the center, I think they're all pretty happy with what we did back in the primary and what we're continuing to do going forward for the general election.
Mr. Secretary, you said in a podcast last week that there are small localized incidents of fraud, but you also said this quote, "But you're not going to see widespread fraud in a presidential or a Senate or a governor's race. It's just not feasible, and it hasn't been feasible in 70 or 80 years." Explain.
Yeah. So in Kentucky, I ran for this office last year on a platform about integrity. It's how I came from 15 points down to win comfortably. And I thought about vote fraud. It's not a myth. It does happen. In Kentucky, when it happens, typically it's a race for a local office. It's for a county executive position or a mayor position. We've had about 22 cases that I've found in the last decade and a half, actual convictions, not just allegations of vote fraud. And it's always been in connection with local races. It's not been in connection with a statewide race. We used to have those types of situations back in the day. As recently as the 1940s, we had someone try to steal a U.S. Senate election, but you really haven't seen that in my lifetime, the last, say, 70 or 80 years. It's really hard to steal a statewide race. I don't even know how you would do it. It'd have to be really, really close, and you'd have to have some sort of statewide organization, some sort of infrastructure built in to steal it and then not get caught. I think that's pretty tough.
You'd have to have a whole lot of personal information for individual voters as well. Kentucky Secretary of State Michael Adams, thank you for coming on and clarifying things for us. We do appreciate all of your time, sir.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.